and welcome back to my channel for this video, which is going to be the part 3 of my living room makeover. I'm coming to you today from my living room floor, which, as you can see, is where my TV is currently located. And honestly, it's quite nice sitting down here. I have always enjoyed being on the floor, but I can imagine that it could be slightly neck achy watching this for any extended period of time from up on the sofa. So let's do something about that. I'll be right back. In this video, I would like to sort out this whole TV area and find a way to transform this piece of paper mache tat into a new piece of paper mache tat that will hopefully fit this space a little bit better. And I think a good place to start would just be to talk through what the issues are with this current setup so that I can attempt to justify to you why it is that I want to do the things that I do want to do in this space. Issue number 1. The TV itself is obviously way too low. It does not make for comfortable viewing, and it also looks a mess having all of these miscellaneous cables just out on the floor on full show. Issue number 2. The unit itself is too wide. It takes up more floor space than it needs to, and it also makes it a little bit of a tight squeeze trying to get in between this TV and this armchair, which isn't ideal. Issue number 3. It does not flow nicely into this existing paper mache unit that lives on this wall here. The shapes and the colours are not matching up, and it's all looking very disjointed. Issue number 4. The view from the back is also kind of a mess. The tricky thing about having this piece of furniture in this particular location is that it obviously juts out somewhat central to the space. This thing used to live on the top of my sideboard, sat flush against a wall, so all of this back section used to be hidden, but now it's on full view. And in this colour, in this very boxy rectangular shape, it just looks to me like a visual dark hole sucking up all the light in this area, and it doesn't look good. That being said, I do think that this piece needs a back because it's got the TV on it, and nobody likes looking at the back of a TV screen either. So the goal is to make something that raises the TV up, maximizes the floor space, flows into this side unit nicely, and also looks good from the back. Easy. Or not. It's actually been quite a challenge for me to get my head around, and I spent most of yesterday staring at it, coming up with and then abandoning various ideas, and eventually drawing out some illustrations of what this could potentially look like in order to tick all of these boxes. So let's go through those. Firstly, from the front, I want to go from this to this, which on its own looks much like any other TV unit. It has a surface on the top for the TV to go on and some kind of shelf underneath for me to throw the remote control or whatever other bits of junk that I have laying about. The key here is that the shape of this piece needs to flow nicely into the existing unit on the side and lock in along this edge here. I'm going for an organic asymmetrical shape in tune with this one, and ideally, if I have any of the paint left, this section would be painted in the same colour to match to try and achieve a seamless flow between the two. Then we want to cover up the back of the TV, and rather than a rectangular shape as it is now, again I want to introduce some irregular curves a bit like this. And I'm thinking that this part of the unit would be painted in the same pink colour as the walls so that it becomes almost a visual extension of the walls themselves, if that makes sense. I want this back piece to slope gently upwards as it gets closer to the wall, and I've done this because of that lamp, which used to live behind that weird clothes rail rug contraption that I had in here before, and it is objectively an ugly piece of mass-produced shit. But I want to keep it nonetheless because I am a sucker for colour changing lights, and I do think that this room will really benefit from having lots of lighting options in it. And I figured that if I moved it to this corner, it could sit there semi-hidden by the mirror, semi-hidden by this back piece, and semi-hidden by this plant, so that we don't have to look at the ugly lamp itself, but we do get to enjoy the lovely glowy colours. So now that's all in place, let's quickly look at the view from the back. And first we can pop our lamp into place and then cover that back up again with the mirror. From what we've drawn on the front, we can now assume that the back of this unit might look a bit like this. which is slightly awkward. I think that this whole back piece being flat isn't doing it any favours, so I figured why not extend the footprint out slightly depthways and add a curved ledge along the bottom for the plant to sit on. I was also thinking I could add a couple of shallow shelves on the back as well to display some books or knickknacks. Then the back of this unit becomes a usable thing rather than just a pointless thing. So that's the whole plan, and as always I have no clue if this is going to work, but we're going to try regardless. Let's get going. I have started the day by gathering together a load of supplies. We have lots of cardboard boxes that I've been collecting, and then I also bought this lightweight kind of wooden pallet box thing just from a charity shop for a few pounds, because I thought that the base of this might need something to ground it and give it that initial bit of strength, and I figured this could be a good option for that. And now we just need to turn all of this into a functioning TV unit. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is move the current TV unit out of the way and get one of these bigger cardboard boxes, lay it out, and then just draw onto it the general size and shape that we're looking for from the base, and then we can build upwards from there. I'm using this box that my dress form came in to make this initial footprint because it's quite a big piece of cardboard and it's also relatively strong. So if we just flatten this out, now we can try and figure out what this shape is going to look like. So it's going to be as wide as this one here. TV is going to be about here, so that width is good. Something like this-ish, maybe? Okay, so I moved the TV into place and I've realised that it does not need to be as long as this. So I'm going to adjust this and cut it off more like that. I also need to extend it out at the back a bit for the plant pot. I don't know if this piece is actually going to be on the base, because as you can see from my drawing, I do want the base to kind of be curved, not flat on the floor all the way, but it is going to be really useful for me to have this guide so that I know I need to be keeping the shape within this kind of dimension. What now? This box, I thought that this would be good because when it's lying on its side like this, it's a pretty similar height to this shelf here on my existing unit, and I want my TV sitting at about the height of that shelf. I think that this will help with the flow and continuity between the two pieces. So let's put the TV back on and see how that looks height-wise from up on the sofa. That actually works quite well. Should I just stop the whole thing here? Okay, next thing I'm going to do is balance this existing unit on top of that box, because I do want to make sure that I'm using as much of this existing thing as possible, because I do not want to waste it. And I think that this bottom piece and this back panel in particular might as well make up the frame of this, because they're already a nice right angled thing that's in place that are relatively strong. I'll just need to hack off some of this other stuff. All of this end stuff here is way overshooting my new guidelines. That needs to be in line with this wall. So that will be like that. Confusing. This is about as far as my brain had processed the steps I would take to build this frame. Bottom guide box, this on top. And now I'm blanking somewhat on what I should do next. It's almost harder starting with existing things than it would be if I was like building fresh from the ground up. I think I need to just start hacking bits off of this so that we've got more smaller separate elements rather than this huge thing. And I think the place I'll start is this end here. I'm going to cut basically all of this straight off. So if I just draw on where needs to come off. Also, that's well dusty. Right, I'll dust that and then get my box cutter and we'll hack this end off first. Did it. That was actually really hard work. It looks like shit, but this is the piece that I wanted. We prop that up on that box there and line it up with the corner of that wall. Pop the TV on, see how that fits. Okay. And then I was thinking, what if this old top piece was turned on its side like that and slotted somewhere under like this? And then we've got some like little shelves at the end here. It's not in the original plan, but the original plan was very much just a guideline for me. And I don't know, I feel like that's kind of nice. Or it could be on the bottom like that, or sideways. Lots that could be done. Okay, I've been staring at this for 10 minutes and moving things around, and I think I have a new plan that deviates quite far from my illustration, and that is thus. It's all kind of roughly propped up at the moment, so you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit. I put this box quite far along towards this end to give it a good amount of strength at this edge here. I also, in my drawing, did want a kind of swoopy thing that goes up from this point. So if this is here, that is a useful anchor that's going to allow me to lift the bottom off the bottom along this edge. Then here, ignore all of this, this would go up and there would be a little slot cubby hole for the remote somewhere around there. I've shifted this so the opening of it is at the back, which I'm thinking will actually be really useful because I can keep it hollow and maybe put some little paper mache cupboard doors on the front. And then inside of it, I can store my blow-up mattress, which I have never had a good place to put. So it generally gets shoved in different places when it's not in use. This could be the designated blow-up mattress cupboard, accessed from behind. And then also what I've done is flipped that top section on its end, and rather than put it here, I've propped it up over there next to the mirror. Then it makes a kind of skinny shelf that I can put some books or stuff on, and it will also serve to hide that lamp. And then the back can flow up into it. The only thing that this plan doesn't account for is my plant, which was going to live in that corner, but that's no great loss because the plant can really live anywhere in this room. It's a nice looking plant. I can put it there, I could put it there, I could put it there. So I'm scrapping the plant ledge considerations because I think they are probably the least important. And I'm now going to work from this base to try and get the rest of the frame piece together. I need to chop this chunky leg off here, I need to chop the edge of this off, and then start adding the cardboard curves around so that we actually see what this shape is going to look like. So I'm going to start doing that, and then I will show you at intervals throughout the process so you can hopefully see what I'm doing. It is kind of hard to illustrate this because lots of what's going on is going on in my head rather than in the real world at the minute. In reality, I know it just looks like a pile of junk. Okay, I've hacked all of the unnecessary excess off, and now we can start building up our shape to make it fit nicely into this corner. And I'm going to start by bending this strip of cardboard to fit around this curve here. I really like this ridgy type of cardboard because it's good for making curves, and I want this to slot just underneath this edge here. So I think I will mark where I'm going to cut it about there, and then slice it all the way down. Might as well use both strips of this. I want all of the pieces to be quite chunky. I think one of the reasons why this piece was a lot more successful than this piece was that I made a lot more effort on this one to create more depth to all of the edges, so it has that chunky look. This one just always looked a little bit flimsy and thin, and part of the reason why I did that was because it was sitting on top of a surface. But for this project, it's gonna look bad if it's like that. So we want nice chunky edges. And now I want to cut a big surface piece that's gonna extend out further than this box and match back up with this. And for that, I want to use this piece of cardboard. So I'm gonna lift it up, cut that shape out and slap it on the top. Everything I do is so damn slapdash. I've obviously cut it way too big, but I do also want to slice a big notch down it so that it can slip around this one and still have a little ledge on the back. Also, if you're worried about my rugs, I am cutting onto this piece of MDF, so I'm not slicing my lovely rug. Don't you worry. How much further do I want this? Okay, that looks good to me. Let's put the TV on it. That looks okay. Now I need to cut a front piece to cover up this front side here. But before I do that, I'm gonna get myself some peach squash because I'm pretty thirsty. I'm gonna pop that there for now. I have had some people ask me in the past how waterproof this kind of paper mache furniture is, and I would say once it's got this sealing coat of the Mod Podge on at the end, it is pretty good. You can probably get away with popping a drink on it occasionally, but it's better to be safe than sorry, so I would always recommend using a coaster. Though in my case, I don't actually have any coasters, which is a little bit silly really, and I would like some. Luckily for me though, I have recently found a class online that is going to help me make some, thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. As I was saying, I don't really own any coasters, with the exception of this Afghan hound one that lives in my bedroom. And since I really do want to be protecting my paper mache furniture pieces, and because I am going for a granny-esque style here in this living room, I thought that making myself a set of crocheted coasters would be an ideal fit. Sadly though, my experience with crochet is extremely limited. That is to say, a friend did try and teach me how to do it about 5 years ago and I was rubbish at it. So now I'm looking to Skillshare to help me out with a second attempt. And luckily for me, there were a lot of classes on Skillshare for me to choose from. As more or less a complete beginner, I was drawn in by this set of classes by Tony Lipsey, which details all of the skills and knowledge that you need to get started with crochet, from what yarns to pick, how to hold your hook, and some basic stitches to make up your project. This then leads into the class project, which follows step by step along the journey of making this cute set of crocheted coasters. When my friend was trying to teach me how to crochet in the past, I felt a bit embarrassed having to constantly ask her to stop, repeat things, and admit that I didn't know what I was doing. But the beauty of learning on Skillshare is that there really is no pressure, no time limits, and you can rewind and rewatch to your heart's content to make sure that you get each step correct. Throughout this class, Tony speaks clearly and shows close-ups of her work so that you don't get lost along the way. And while I did start off being pretty confused, by the time I got into this project, I was thoroughly enjoying myself and I found the whole thing really meditative and relaxing. And now I have this new coaster and a new skill under my belt that I can explore more in the future. Skillshare is the best place to learn a creative skill or pick up a new hobby. If you're looking to reconnect with your creativity and maybe avoid the brain rot of social media, Skillshare is where humans come to learn from other humans. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the paper mache. Now this top surface is somewhat in place, I need to figure out how I'm adding my front panel and our little cubby shelf thing here. And before I start messing around with that, I think it's probably safer to try and secure some of what I've already done into place so that we're not going to be moving around a lot. So I've got my staple gun. I'm going to shove some staples through it in various places, and then I think drill down and actually screw this top section into this wooden box so that it's somewhat secure. The frames for paper mache don't need to be super strong, because once you start with the paper and glue itself, it really really does suck it all in and turn it into one quite solid structure. But because this is a big piece with quite a lot of moving parts, I think I'm going to put more effort in to tightening it down at different steps than what I would do on a smaller thing. Just seems a little bit safer to me. This is more so for the benefit of that purple thing underneath this top cardboard. It's obviously just going to rip through this top cardboard. So I should have done this first, but didn't know what I was doing at that point. And these holes will be easy to fill with the paper, so I'm not too worried. Now it's attached. Okay, this shelfy bit here. At the minute, the underside of that is propped up with one of these, which probably isn't very good. So let's think that through. Also, let's turn the drill off so I don't drill myself. So we need something under there that's gonna keep it secure. And I am trying to use up bits of this old thing. Could I wedge that under? Would that work? Yes, but not well. What if I cut it to the right height and used it as a leg? Let's try that. See what I mean? The inside of this is basically hollow, but once it's paper mache'd, it is very strong. What if that just went under there somewhere? That seems pretty good. So I'll attach this on underneath and then show you. Okay, leg is on, kind of. It is a little bit wobbly, but the top is at least now straight. And I think it's serviceable for the time being. Now I'm going to add this curved bit around this front section. And then I think I'm going to do something I wouldn't normally do, which is to start paper macheing before actually all of the frame is built, because it is quite flimsy at the minute. And I'm worried that as I'm jigging things around to do back pieces and undersides and whatnot, it's all going to fall apart and I'm going to lose the shape. So going to get this front bit on, and then I'm going to paper mache just over this section, so at least that will be secure. I don't know if I'm doing any of this in the order that I should be, to be honest with you. I'm getting a little bit flustered. Right, I do need a shelfy thing here. So how am I going to do that? What if that's slotted in somewhere there? Oh, I don't know. Why am I getting so confused? Maybe I'll eat this banana first and then think. I kind of need to flip it upside down. What if I flip it on its back and actually paper mache the underside first? I just don't want to lose this curve and end up paper macheing that wrong, so maybe let's add some more tape. When in doubt, add tape. I've seen quite a lot of people online making paper mache furniture things a bit like this now, and none of them seem to do it in as chaotic of a way as I do it, which makes me feel a bit silly really, but what can you do? What if I do this? Okay, the front of this frame is now more or less in place. I know, by the way, that it looks like shit. I'm trying not to be alarmed by that. We have our little cubby shelf here, obviously the top surface and this curve going around. I also cut the bottom so it's got this curved shape as I did in my drawing. And now I'm just going to get some newspaper and some PVA, and I'm going to paper mache over just what I've done today, in the hopes that by tomorrow that first layer will be dry enough to be able to move this around and me not lose this shape. And I'm using a big paintbrush for this because we're covering a big surface area. I do also have loo roll as well that I'll use to shove down in some of the cracks. The loo roll's good just for plugging up kind of smaller holes before you go over with the big sheets. This is my self-devised method that works all right for me. You don't want to skimp on the glue. put loads on, and then once you put the newspaper over the bits with the loo roll, you can kind of smush it into shape. It's easier to shape it once the newspaper's on top because then it won't shred off in your hands. And that is what I'm going to spend the next few hours doing, I suppose. Okay, it's about an hour and a half later and I've paper mache'd about as much as what I can today. I'm hoping that this is going to touch dry overnight and then I'll be able to pull it out, flip it over and finish making the rest of this frame. Still not sure about it. I quite like the shape though. It does slot in nicely to this one over here. So I'm thinking positive thoughts. And I think I'd better do a little bit tidying up because my living room is currently an absolute pigsty. So I'll sign off, do a little bit of tidying, and then see you again tomorrow morning. It's a new day and this is now mostly touch dry. Some of the bits where I shoved a load of the wet toilet paper are still a little bit damp underneath, but this is good enough to carry on working on. And looking at it this morning with fresh eyes, I'm actually pretty pleased with how this is looking. I moved my armchair back into place last night just so I could get a better idea of how the flow between the two things is now feeling. And I think with this now being that bit shorter and also having a curved edge, it works much better. So I'm pleased. It has occurred to me that since I wanted to add this back ledge behind this shelf, there is going to be a slight issue when it comes to me needing to flip this around to cover the bottom. So I think I need to do that first before I add any more on this back. So that's what I'm going to be working on today. I'm going to turn it onto its side and just cover the whole bottom in the paper mache. I also have two issues with filming today. Number one being that it is a very grey day outside, so the lighting isn't great. And number two, they are doing mains gas work on my street and it is intermittently incredibly loud. Which isn't ideal for talking to the camera. So I figure while I cover all of this, it's not that exciting anyway, we can cut away to a short little segment of me talking about TV units, and then we'll cut back at the end of the day and I'll show you what I've done covering all of this mess up. I think the TV units are a tricky piece of furniture to get right, and I know as somebody who works in charity retail that they are also something that people are commonly looking to get rid of, and they can be very difficult to sell on, particularly the ones that look like this. We actually have a rule at work not to take these ones anymore because we simply cannot sell them as quickly as they are donated. I don't know if I'm just particularly picky, but I dislike most of the TV units on the market. And there is, of course, a huge variety of them available, most of which are not objectively ugly by any means, but very few of which are my particular taste. The aforementioned glass top ones make me think of sticky, smeary fingers in the early 2000s. The kind of modern, sleek gloss white ones you can get feel a bit soulless, and those farmhousey pine ones are just a bit too pine. There's also obviously lots of options for units that are more trend driven, like mid-century modern style ones, boho-y ones with rattan doors, pop arty postmodern ones in bright colours with all the bells and whistles. So you'd think that there would be something for everyone. But after many hours of online scrolling, I have yet to find a TV unit that feels right for me and my space. I think that when there's any piece of furniture or utilitarian item in your house that you just irrationally dislike and that you can't find a good option for on the market, it's good to try thinking outside of the box and consider what you could use or what you could make instead. Why does a TV unit look like a TV unit? There are obviously practical factors to take into consideration, but beyond those things, there really aren't any rules for what you can do, what you can use in your own home. I've seen more people recently getting those futuristic looking TV stands that you can wheel about, and I think that those are kind of fun in a let's watch Shrek on the last day of term kind of way. And also Pinterest has alerted me to the trend of putting TVs on painting easels, which I also think is kind of interesting, though I do wonder what you're supposed to do about all the cables with those. My initial idea for my TV unit was actually way more out there than what I finally settled on. I was feeling really inspired by the idea of Punch and Judy style puppet theatres, which I thought would be a fun and interesting twist on a TV unit because they obviously have curtains, so I was thinking I could shut the curtains and hide my TV away when it wasn't in use. I also thought that this would be a particularly fun thing to try and make, which is always a consideration for me. As it turned out though, I decided that this idea wouldn't work too well in my specific space because of the height it'd need to be and the fact that all the sides would be boxed in. I thought it would end up being too bulky and invasive in the space, but in the right room, I think that that would be a super fun idea. I was also thinking about different things that have like backs because my TV unit needed to have a back. So I did consider making a giant clamshell at one point. I also thought about using some sort of chair. Like I say, there are no rules. I think it's good practice generally to really allow yourself to play around with your ideas, look at different sources for inspiration, and try and stretch your brain to what the most extreme version of that idea could be, and then go ahead and scale that back to what could work in your actual space. So yeah, that's my slightly scattered thoughts on TV units and making things in general. I hope you enjoyed. And now let's go back to me. The base is mostly covered, the sun has come out, and the gas mains people have left for the day. So I figured we could pick up filming here. I'm about to work on this side of the unit, which I need to fill in before I can cover it. And I was just going to cover it with a round piece as I have done with the rest of this, but then I thought, why not add another fun detail? A couple of little curved shelves that follow around this line. I think that could be nice. So I'm going to shimmy this around so we got a bit more space. Also look at my hands, so crusty and gluey. This is how you know I'm in my element. Okay, here's our edge that we're working on, and first up I need to extend this space around to match the curb at the top. I'm doing this with a piece of cardboard, which I can fold into a nice right angle and slot like this. Then I'm just gonna stick it down into place with a bit of tape. Where and how I'm taping doesn't really matter. It's just to stop the piece moving about or enough time for me to cover it in the paper mache. And now I need to chop this into the right kind of shape. So we're gonna go up from this corner and round off to meet this edge here. Now I'll just use some more cardboard to add some weight to this bit, add some weight here, and also add our central shelf there. Let's peel some of this off actually. Ooh, that's satisfying. And now, since this is like a little hollow pocket, just gonna scrumple up some of my spare cardboard and shove it inside of that just to give it a little bit more mass. And then tape it together. There really isn't an exact science to how I do any of this. You could make a frame in a very methodical way, in the way that you would make a wooden piece of furniture. That is cut out pieces that slot together perfectly, make it really crisp and even. But that would require having lots of pieces of big cardboard, and it's not as fun to me as it is to just use little scrappy bits and shove them together. And the end result, once it's all covered in the paper and glue anyway, really won't be that noticeably different. I actually did this side different than how I did this side, and both will end up looking fine. I'm going to shove more card in the middle of here. Might as well chuck this empty loo roll thing in there as well. Making big paper mache things is actually a really good way of getting rid of stuff. You could just make something like this and fill all the empty crevices with junk that isn't recyclable, that won't sell at a charity shop. Better than it ending up in landfill. It's just mass at the end of the day. Anything that you can shove in there that isn't too heavy will do the trick. I don't have anything particularly interesting to dispose of at the minute, so I'm just using old cardboard, but it's a good way of recycling to keep in mind. Right, that's our top and bottom edges in place. I'm just going to pop in a central shelf and then I'll show you how it looks. Middle shelf is in place, and now I can cover all of what I've just done with my paper. And this will be a good illustration of how we go from pretty flimsy, to be honest with you, to sturdy and usable. Let's paper. Okay, done. And as you can see, these are much sturdier already, and they will be even more so after they've dried and had another coat of paper mache and dried again and been painted. These will be perfectly serviceable shelves. And now I can't really do any more today. I need to leave things to dry, so I'll be back in a couple of days' time to flip this over and carry on. A new day is upon us, and here is our unit just as we left it, but now dry. And today I want to finish covering the underside of this, all the stuff that's now resting on the floor and that I haven't been able to reach. So I'm going to flip it over the other way and do all of that. First up though, let's put it right way up and just test it back in this slot to see how it's looking now that the bottom is a little bit more secure. Pretty good, I think. Okay, now I'll rest it on its front and do all of that papering. It should be okay lying like this. Just prop something under one side of it so it's not rolling over. We can also get this back ledge made today. Let me show you how it's looking from the top at the minute. This is our little cubby hole that we'll access from both the front and the back. Then we've got these hollow pockets of space that I'm just going to stuff with a bit more cardboard and then cover over. And obviously we've got our box here that's going to be the cupboard. So let's get cracking. Okay, all of our gaps in this little section are now filled in, and now I'm going to paper mache just over this bit. Okay, that's done. And now I'm going to fix this little ledge thing into place and cover all of that and the inside of this box with some more of our paper and glue. Okay, that's all done. Inside of this box, back end of these shelves and underside of this ledge are now all covered, and I have basically run out of newspaper, which is slightly annoying because I still need quite a lot more, so I'm going to have to go out and scrounge for some at some point. But I can still carry on working on this today because I want to cover the whole thing in a final coat of the paper mache, but with the loo roll. And I like doing this because it fills in some of the little gaps and where the edges of the newspaper peel up. And it also gives it a nice textured finish, and I did it on that one, so this one does need to match as well. I probably won't bother doing the underside because that's going to be against the floor, but anything that's going to be visible to the eye I do want to cover in the loo roll. So I'm going to spend the next few hours doing that, and then I'll show you how we're looking. It's a few days later. What I did the other day is now dry. I did end up going over the whole bottom, even though I said I wasn't going to. Never trust anything that I say. I'm happy with how the shape of this back is looking now. I think it all flows really nicely. You can see where I filled in all of the edge creases with extra loo roll. They all now curve lovely and smoothly around. And now I need to carry on covering the other side of it with more of the loo roll. First up, let's flip it over, put it into space and see how it's looking at the minute. One of the benefits of paper mache furniture is that it's really lightweight, which is very handy when you like moving things around as much as as I do. I obviously do need to sort out this back wall thing here, but today I'm just going to focus on getting the rest of this bottom bit that I've already worked on covered in the loo roll so that this section of it is more or less ready to go. I think what I did at the back is looking good, though I have realised I'm not happy with one part of it. This middle shelf here, for some reason I chopped it at more of like a right angle than a smooth curve like this top surface and bottom shelf. So I am just going to hack that off and reshape it so it's correct. It's a bit annoying that I did that, but if I'm going to fix it, now is the time. Okay, that shape is much better. Now I can patch that up with some more of my paper mâché and also go over all the rest of this front with the loo roll as well. The next day, the work going on outside was even louder than it had been, so we are voiceovering. I started the day thinking about cable management, which is of course an important consideration for a TV unit. I needed to figure out how I was feeding the cables from this plug socket down here up to where the TV would be sitting on the top of the unit. And I figured that the gap of space on the floor between the two units would be a good hidden spot for a multi-plug to live. So if I cut a hole in this little curved edge here, then the cables could feed up the side and mostly stay hidden. The hole needed to be big enough for a plug to slot through, and cutting this was actually very annoying and fiddly, but I did it. Next, I had to think about fixing up this back panel, which at the time was barely big enough to cover the TV from any angle. I wanted a big swoopy shape like in my illustration, which required a lot more cardboard to add both height and width. I wanted the back panel to curve around the side of the unit slightly in the hopes that it would cover up the TV a bit more from the side view. I then stuck another piece of cardboard to the front of the existing back panel, creating a little hollow pocket at the top, which I could stuff with more card to give the whole panel the chunky depth that I was looking for. Next up, I had to make that curvy shape, and I started freehand cutting it out, then realised I should probably draw the shape on first, so that I could stand back and look at it before I cut the rest. Once I was happy with how it was looking, I grabbed my box cutter and sliced it all off. It was quite wobbly and precarious at this point, so I did my best to secure it all in place with some more tape. I patched up the curved side section with another bigger piece of card and then filled in the gaps with some smaller scrap pieces. And then I tested it out with the TV in place and checked it from the front and the side and the back, and I thought it looked okay, so I started covering the front with the paper mâché. This was a bit tricky to do because the panel kept wobbling about as I worked, and I was really excited for this layer to dry to give it a bit more structural integrity. I also realised while I was doing this that I wasn't happy with how that side curve was looking. The edge of it was a bit too abrupt and it didn't flow into the rest of the unit nicely, so I decided to extend it round a bit more. I like thinking of paper mâché as like a 3D form of patchwork. As long as you have enough materials, it's pretty easy to chop and change your ideas as you go, add or remove things and rectify your mistakes. And I think that this curve looks much better now. Next up, I moved my attention onto the back of the unit. And speaking of changing plans, I decided to scrap using that shelf piece from the old unit altogether, opting instead to add 2 shallow shelves onto the back of the unit, which is actually much more similar to my original design. This was just a lot more fiddling around with cardboard, folding and cutting and sticking until they looked about right. I wanted them to be deep enough to hold a few small trinkets, books or pictures, things that I can style and switch out to make the back of the unit look a little bit less weird and stark. Then I covered all of this in more of a newspaper so that I could end the day with the unit fully covered and looking weirdly like a sailboat. Oh, and then the next day I did cover all of that stuff in the toilet paper, but I didn't film that. It's 5 days later because this has taken forever to dry. I'd shoved quite a lot of the wet loo roll into some of the crevices on this when I was covering it, particularly in this back corner here, which needed filling out and shaping around quite a lot. And those thick bits of the toilet paper have slowed the dry time down significantly, which has been quite frustrating. Most mornings I've been getting up and excitedly running over to it to give it a poke and check if it's ready, and it just keeps making me wait longer and longer. until today when it is finally dry. I think it's looking good for the most part. It feels nice and solid and sturdy now with lovely knockable surfaces, and the whole shape I think flows together quite well. One bit of it though that I'm not entirely thrilled about is the angle of this front panel here, which I do think would probably look better if it fell straight down rather than on a diagonal like it is. When you look at the unit from a side view and just focus in on this section, it does kind of make it look like the whole thing is leaning backwards, which isn't ideal. But I'm just telling myself that it's not that big of an issue. The armchair is going to be mostly blocking that view of it anyway, and we can just call it a quirk of the piece. And now we can move on to our next tedious but important step, which is sanding, which I do like to do on most of my paper mache pieces these days. The goal of the sanding isn't to create a perfectly smooth surface on this, it's more so just to reduce the gritty surface texture that's been created by all of this toilet paper, and which at the moment is more noticeable in some areas of the unit than others. Giving the whole thing a quick rub down with some fine grit sandpaper smooths it out just enough to feel nicer under the hand, and also gives the whole piece a uniformity, which I do think is beneficial. Okay, done. And it doesn't really look any different, but it does feel slightly different. As actually do I. I am now pretty sweaty. We're having a bit of a heat wave in the UK at the minute, and we do not cope with heat over here. It's not a fun time to be sanding. So I did do a bit of a half-assed job on that, if I'm honest, but it'll do. Now we are ready to paint. And thankfully I was able to find more of this light blush colour to match that unit hidden away in my stocks, and I'm hoping that I have enough left of this to do what I need to do on here. And then we also have this darker pink colour as well that I did on my walls, and I know I have plenty of this. And I have been slightly questioning my painting plan for this piece, since doing a dual tone like this could be slightly tricky to pull off on this kind of organic shape, where the edges are all curved and not very well defined. Like if I want to have this back piece in the dark pink and then this bottom piece in the light, where exactly do I draw the line between each colour? I'm not sure. I'm a bit worried that it's going to look wobbly and messy around the edges because there is no definitive edge of either piece. I could, I guess, try and blend the colours together along the edges where the two shades meet, but I don't know if that will look really good. I think it probably would look best if the whole unit was just painted in one colour, but I do really want this bit to match up with that unit and that bit to match up with the wall colour. So I'm going to try and do what I was imagining, and then I will review how it looks, and if needs be we can pivot. I'm going to start by painting all of the bits that I'm thinking need to be the lighter colour first, so we can see how that's going to look. It is very satisfying to finally see colour go onto a piece like this. You get so used to all of the visual mess from the newspaper and the uneven surface, so it's extremely soothing to see it all finally tidied up and pulled together with an even coat of one single colour. I do find that emulsion paints are really good to use on paper mache pieces, particularly big ones like this. Acrylic paint is a good option for smaller pieces, especially for something that requires mixing lots of small quantities of different shades. But for something big where you're just using one or two colours, having a large quantity of pre-mixed paint is extremely convenient, and they go on really nicely too. Okay, partway through painting this, and I've been looking at the colour that's on this and looking at the colour of the unit over there, and I've realised that they are not the same colour. This is much more pink, that is much more beige, and I was really confused because I was certain that this was the paint that I'd used on that unit, so I went back to the video in which I made that to check that I was using this, and as it turns out, I was not. I was actually using a different lip paint colour that I used to paint my toilet room, but I definitely do not have any of that paint left. So now I'm at a bit of a loss on what to do, because I'm not willing to buy a whole new tin of that colour paint in order to paint this, and I'm not certain if I will be able to mix that colour well. I was thinking I could just mix this one with some white emulsion and just hope that it comes out similar, or if it doesn't matter too much that it's going to be a slightly different colour. It's not hugely different, like it's a similar brightness, it's just a slightly different shade. And since I do have this lack of confidence on mixing a colour, I think I'm just going to carry on with the one I'm doing and hope that it looks okay in the end. So yeah, that's just a slightly annoying interlude to explain something that I didn't realise ahead of time. And now I'm just going to carry on and pretend like it doesn't bother me. Do you ever wish when you're painting that real life painting was like how it is in The Sims, where you could just press a button and see all of the different options fully completed? Sometimes I do literally think in my head Control Z as well to like undo something, and then I remember this is real life and that doesn't work, which is quite sad, but what are you gonna do? Also, I know that where the original back piece connects to these new pieces, there is this like obvious line, but I'm not worried about it because that's where the TV covers anyway. You have to pick your battles in a project, and getting that right just didn't seem the most pressing to me. Okay, ignore all of the mess that I've made on the top, and I haven't tried to do that meeting line very neatly because I just wanted to see what it was going to look like. What do we think? What do I think? Having the pink on here does make this colour look lighter, more similar to that one. So the two-tone kind of works. Shimmy it over so it's closer to the wall. Yeah, I think I like the two-tone, and I think what I'll do is cut it like this, paint all of this top section on the back in the dark pink from this shelf up, and then underneath down will be in the lighter colour. I feel like that will work. I'm going to slap this first coat of this dark pink on all of this quickly because in about 20 minutes I have to go out and get my hair cut because it is looking a bit of a bloody mess at the minute. And it'll also give me an opportunity to step away and come back to it with fresh eyes. Not thrilled about the prospect of going out in this heat though. My pasty skin doesn't really appreciate UV rays very much, so I'm gonna have to slather this in this paint and then slather myself with some Factor 50. And then I'll show you how it's looking when I'm back. I've got a fresh do and we can carry on with this. I'm back and the hair is shorter. But my God, is it hot outside? I felt like I was gonna pass out walking home. When I got in, I got straight in the shower and just poured a bottle of cold water over me and changed back into my grubby painting clothes, but I'm still quite uncomfortably warm. So I'm gonna clip this new hair back up to get it off my neck. Here's our thing. And I came back in, looked at it, and I think I'm pleased. Obviously haven't painted the underside the lighter colour yet, but the toilet paper gives a good idea of how it will look in a dual tone, and I think it works. Let's just have a look actually how it looks from the back. It's not exactly in place, but that works quite nicely, I think. So we can carry on. Also, I hope you'll notice that I'm actually using a big paintbrush for this, so there's no need to roast me for using a small fan brush. Something this size does warrant a large brush, so I concede on that. Okay, this whole thing is now covered. I've done 2 coats on all of this lighter colour. I am going to do a second coat on the darker pink, but I think I don't need to film that, and I will then let it dry overnight and come back to you tomorrow for us to finish this off. It's time to seal the deal, and the deal in this case is obviously this TV unit. And I'm starting early today. It's about 7:30 in the morning, mostly because it is boiling and I didn't sleep well. And I also know that I'm gonna have to let the bottom of this dry before I can flip it up and do the sides. So I figured I'm awake anyway, I might as well get going. If you've watched any of my other paper mache projects, you'll know that I always like to finish them off with a healthy coat of Mod Podge to give them a nice, slightly glossy finish that feels nicer to the touch and adds a layer of protection to all of this paper and paint. And I am reverting back to my sick old ways with this and putting this all on with this small fan brush. Please don't hate me. This is a new tub of Mod Podge, so we're breaking the seal. Gluey fingers already. Not the most elegant start, but now I can smooth this all out and cover every surface in a coat of this, which is a nice, easy, mindless thing to do. I've gotten through a lot of this glue already, and I've only done the underside and this bottom section at the back. So I fear I am gonna have to go out in this horrible heat later to buy some more of this, but we'll carry on as long as it lasts. Okay, the back is all done and I am indeed out of glue. So I'm gonna have to take a 45-minute round trip walking in this horrible heat to go to the works to get some more, which is frustrating. I did think I was going to be able to get it all done with this, but apparently not. You can see quite well here the line between where I have done this top coat and where I haven't. They obviously feel different, but the colour is slightly different too. It becomes more of like a richer, deeper colour once the glue's on, which is nice. And I'm excited to cover the rest of it. So I'll go out, get some more glue, and then come back. Okay, I'm back. I've got the goods, and now I'm going to finish covering the rest of this and then leave it overnight to fully dry. We are basically done, and I only have one small little addition for this unit before we can finally move it into place and get our TV set up. And that is this tiny little curtain that I've made for our cubby down here. I was originally thinking that I'd add cupboard doors to that cubby, but I ended up deciding that a curtain was actually going to be easier, and I thought it would be nice to add some fabricy softness to this unit. This is actually the same fabric that I used for the ruffle trim on my lampshade and the curtain on my doll's house, so hopefully it will work nicely on this as well. Okay, done. And now we can finally get this whole thing popped in place and set up. It's finished, and it is admittedly a slightly odd looking thing, though it does look a lot like my illustration, so I guess that's what I was going for. Overall, I am really happy with it. I love how it flows into this unit here, despite the slight difference in colour, which does continue to annoy me, but I'm working on getting over it. I'm happy with all of the new storage options it's given me for my blow-up mattress, my assorted trinkets, and of course, the TV itself, which I can now comfortably lie on my sofa and watch without fear of having any neck ache, which is great. It's always really satisfying seeing a pile of assorted cardboard turn into something functional for my home. And if you haven't already, I would highly recommend that you give paper mache a go and see what kind of shit you can make. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate everybody who tunes into my videos, especially because I know that they are quite long and can be a little bit rough around the edges. In this video in particular, I have been having some audio issues because of all of the noise going on outside, which has required me to learn some new audio editing techniques, and I honestly don't know if those have made things better or worse. I did see a comment on my last video suggesting that I get a mic, and I think that you're probably right. It's something that I've been avoiding because it requires me to learn a new piece of technology and I hate to do that, but it is something that I'm going to look into for my future videos. If you are new here and you haven't been too put off by my pitchy, scratchy tone, please do consider subscribing, leaving me a like or a comment, and please come back for more projects in this room in the future. And for now, all that is left to say is goodbye.